I don't want to. I'm going to go into the Ten Hag stuff in a minute. I want to try and keep this compartmentalized in this way. Yesterday's performance, Henry, break it down for me.
Men against boys. Like I thought. I'll be honest. I thought we would win. I predicted a win, but it was just too easy for us. I don't get what Ten Hag's game plan was, and people coming out and saying, it's. If Ten Hag had 11 men on the pitch, I still think you would have lost that game 2 or 3-0. Timo Werner could take his chances. If that's Son on the left-hand side, I think 3-0 is incredibly flattering. What I will say is, from a Man United perspective, you want your captain to deliver and drag you out of big results. It's not a red card, but what on earth are you doing there? We'll get on to Tottenham in a minute, but I thought you were absolutely diabolical. The only one who come off the pitch and I think can hold his head high is Garnacho for me. He was still running even down to 10 men. De Ligt got spun not once, not twice, but 3 times by Timo Werner. He looked a shadow of himself. Dalot marking for the first goal. Like to have that bad concentration levels. Gary Neville summed it up in commentary. You're going out there, the start of the game, you've literally just had the last final words from the manager. That's still ringing in your ears. 3 minutes in, Van der Ven. I don't think there's another centre-back in Europe right now that can run it out from the back like he can. And he just gets space, and they're falling off. So Van der Ven just keeps running. No one's pressing him. It's a fantastic run. It's a ball in a dangerous area. I don't know where Dalot is. And Brennan Johnson is now proved me wrong. That's 4 goals in 4 games. And then he had a chance, 15, 20 minutes afterwards, he hits the post. The back line was all over the place. The midfield was non-existent for United. I'm not going to throw Ugarte under the bus because he's only been there 5 minutes. But this is his 3rd year now, Ten Hag, and there's still no style of play. You can see what Ange wants to do. It's all-out total football. It's attack. We'll worry about defending later. We've turned up to Old Trafford with 2 10s and an 8 in our midfield. There's no DM. It's just 2 10s and an 8. I don't know how he's still in the job. Like the United media and the press are coming out and saying that there's 2 minutes left. But that performance from I've never seen United that bad. In all the Premier League defeats you've had under Moyes, the Louis van Gaal, you were absolutely diabolical. For us to turn up, and you know how you got to beat us, getting in behind with that high line. We genuinely, it was night and day. We had so much time and space on the ball. It looked like, I don't think you've got bad players at all, but I don't get what your setup or system is.
But let me just interject you for a moment. That is what the problem is the basics in Man United's team are not well drilled enough. The reason De Ligt was spun, the reason Ugarte wasn't getting there is not because it's Ugarte and De Ligt. And Man United fans, some are already being dragged into hating on new players and going individuals. We are always late in the press. We don't know where the trigger is. And then the midfield and the defenders are 1 step behind. Yesterday was an even bigger abomination because the players looked like they were confused between do we press or do we sit and absorb and counter? And if you're in between those 2 things, you're screwed because you can't absorb, i.e. the Van der Ven run, and you can't press. We've been doing this for a long time, even before Ten Hag, I will add. But in Ten Hag's reign, we had a period of time in his first season where it looked a little bit better when we just played quite compact. But ever since the beginning of last season, or the back end of his first season, really, when he tried to be more open and expansive, we have never got that balance right. And I'm not saying that some of these players don't have to go. I'm not defending some of them and saying give them new 5-year contracts. But I personally find it so hard to criticize the players when the basic structure is awful and we're not well drilled on the ball. You've got lots of players in your team that started yesterday that I would say are not what any of us would call techie ballers.
No.
Brennan Johnson, Werner. But compared to our players, their first touch, their basic passing and moving is of a higher standard. And by the way, that happens when we play the relegation teams over the last 2 seasons. It happens when we play FC20. None of you would sign a single player in FC20 squad over a Man United player. If you had to choose between the 2 squads, you're picking all of ours over theirs. But they look more comfortable on the ball. That for me is training, and that is how we are drilled. And before we get on to almost nitpicking and saying, you know what, this defender ain't good enough, this striker isn't good enough, let's have some shape. The one game in the last few where we've had good shape, where we've been hard to break down, where we've been regimented, was the Palace game. Barring our finishing, it really was a 3-4-5-1 game. And the bit that annoys me the most is that how we have not taken that into the FC20 and the Spurs game is beyond me. So for all the analysis, for all the players that we want to throw under buses, and I'm plagiarizing a little bit from Staffy here, but I think we share this view. The lack of basics in this team is absolutely ridiculous. Do you know what we're like? You know that, I don't know if I had this. Did any of you grow up with a lad who wasn't old enough to drive but could drive and sometimes joy rode a little bit? Did you know any friends that did that? They know how to drive, but they would still fail a driving test because they don't do the basics right, but they can drive a car. That's Man United. We can joyride, and every now and then we get to our destination safely, but there's always the risk of an absolutely colossal accident happening because the basics are not there in what we do. And it's just pain. It was painful to watch. And I do agree with you. We've been battered by a number of the top 6 sides under Ten Hag, but yesterday's, because it was Tottenham and who Tottenham are and where you sit in the pyramid of that, it was the worst and most painful. Worse for me than conceding 6 and 7 goals to Liverpool's and City's. They're world-class teams. Timo Werner was twining us up, as you said. And I'm not trying to dig you guys out. You guys, 2 games ago, were talking about sacking your manager, and you absolutely bodied us.
It's a funny old game, isn't it?
No, it's mad. And that's my point. If Spurs right now were considered title contenders, I'd be less embarrassed. I'm not even trying to be horrible to Tottenham. I'm looking at it from my perspective. This isn't an Arsenal. This isn't a City. This isn't, Chelsea this season, who everyone's like, wow, look how good that. This is a team that this was called the sack race, El Sacico 2.0, and we didn't lay a fucking glove. The embarrassment levels are crazy.
That's the worst part. Other than the Casemiro volley, which was narrowly wide of the post, and Garnacho's volley, Vicario didn't have to make a save. And this is a defense that individually are good players, but in the system we play can be caught out. And we've seen that time and time and time. Coventry, who rotated 8 players from the Championship side that drew at the weekend, played us, laid more of a punch on us. But there's a picture going around, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter, where you lost the ball around our defense, and the distance between Kobe Mainu, Bruno Fernandes, and I can't remember who the other midfielder is like 40 yards. So that I don't know what sort of shape that is. But,
yeah, but we talk about this every week. How are you surprised? I know you got I feel like rivals, they usually
I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised
they watch their team play United. You know what I'm saying? Like, you hear us, but then until you watch a full 90 minutes because we're playing your team, you don't get to deep how bad it is. You know what I'm saying? Thanks. And I feel like yesterday you deeped how bad it is, because this has just been happening since last year. Like, no disrespect, but 20 did the same thing to us. You just have a little bit more quality over FC20. That run that Van de Ven did, it happened to us 4 days ago. And that's why you're laughing, Tom, but it's actually the definition of insanity, because the same thing happens over and over again, and we expect a different result. If the FC20 player could do it, then of course I expect Van de Ven to do it. He just executed it better because he's a better quality player. But there was even I tweeted this. There was another chance that Timo Werner got, and instead of squaring it to, I think it was Brennan Johnson, he took a shot and Onana saved it. And I saw the whole build-up real quick from Spurs, the transition from the back line to the front line. They showed where the front line was pressing, and then once that front line got beat, they ran at the defense. And you just look at the margins and the distance between where the high press is and where the back line is sitting. Usually, if you're going to press high, that back line needs to squeeze up with you, because if that front line gets beat, you need the defender to be right there. Not only did it happen with the goal, it happened in that one too. And if it wasn't for Onana, it would have been 2 goals with the same idea, which is just someone running through our defense. Whether it's someone carrying the ball or whether it's just one long pass, it is so easy to bypass this Man United midfield. And this is why when I say, and Terry said it earlier, we just don't do basics. We lack basics of football. There's a lot of managers that could come in and just could make us a compact team. Like, we are actually so far behind now. This is why, like earlier, I was talking about, forget all the mentality and all that stuff. All that stuff is a lot more important for me when okay, it's a mentality issue to why you didn't win the league. You're a very good team, but your mentality is letting you down. This is why you can't win big games. You can't get through past the line. We've seen Spurs under Poch do that. They were always good, but they always finished second and lost a Champions League finals. We always thought about, is it the Spurs mentality is what they didn't win? This United team is not even a mentality issue, because if you could play good football, of course you're going to build up confidence. Of course your mentality, you're going to believe, okay, I look like a decent team. I'm scoring goals. I'm getting clean sheets. I must be good. Of course, when you're playing this bad, the mentality is going to be bad. But I can't address the mentality before I address the basics of football. I don't have a manager. I don't know what he says before the game. I would love to, for Amazon. Remember that when they did Amazon, I forgot what was it called, All or Nothing. I would have loved to see under Ten Hag, because I would really want to see how this guy looks at a whiteboard and what are the tactics. Because how bad are your tactics, or how bad are you explaining your tactics for me to see this on the pitch? It's one of the two. Your tactics are shit, or they just completely get it wrong. That you must be speaking like gibberish or something.
After watching this match, to be honest, well, first of all, Henry said men against boys. It was more toddlers against newborns, because Spurs ain't men. But like, just to put, there I am. But this one, when I watched the game, because I watched the whole game, I was thinking diabolical, and I put it mostly on the manager on this one, because people laughed that people were trying to get onto Arsenal when we went 10 men against City, and we sat back and we defended for our lives and we got away with the draw. How Manchester United didn't start at least the first half compact at the back, just be structured at the back. You've got 10 men. Spurs are obviously up for it, and then try and get it, because there was a period in the second half where you guys were actually starting to look like you could get a goal. And I think if you got the goal at 2-1, you never know what would make it 2-1. You never know what's going to happen. I think poor decision making in the final third, which has been a problem for Manchester United the entire season so far. I just, you've got to put it on the manager. How he's not told the team to go and keep it compact, unless he's told them this and they've just ignored him going into that second half. Because how you can go to 10 men, start the second half, and concede so early against Spurs is.
We did it last season against one of the games against Spurs. We went in, I think, 2-1 up at halftime, came out, and we conceded we concede not too many early goals. We concede a lot of early goals in the second half of football. Again, there's too much repetition for it to, again, I can't blame listen, I understand some people think, and I've seen Mark Goldbridge get a lot of stick for the players are going to throw another manager under the bus. Now, the one area I know that they're not all the same players and he spent money, but this is where people have to understand how culture works. This is where they're not completely wrong. It's a lot of new players, but you've all heard about the monkey, the stairs, and the water experiment, right? So they did this experiment. No, they did this experiment, and
say that again. What the monkey?
The monkey, the water, and the stairs. I'll tell you. So what they did is they put 10 monkeys in a cage, and every time any of the monkeys went up a particular flight of stairs in this big enclosure, they all got sprayed with water. So what happened very quickly? Anytime a monkey went near these particular stairs, the other monkeys dragged them down, so don't go near the stairs. What they did once every
conditioning.
Yeah, conditioning. So what then happened every couple of weeks is they'd change a monkey out. And when that new monkey went near those stairs, they'd all stop him and kind of beat him up a bit and don't do it. Eventually, there was not a single monkey left in the enclosure that had ever been sprayed with water, but they still wouldn't let anybody go up the stairs. So they've done these tests before. So this is where I'm not defending Goldbridge, because a lot of players have changed. Cultures transcend onto the next people. How do we know that? How is it possible that you, Giuseppe, as an Italian, your age, are still upholding some of the traditions of Italian men from 1,000 years ago when they're not alive anymore? Because these behaviors and conditions are passed on through generation, and that's an element that does need to be addressed. However, where I disagree with Mark Goldbridge is that the basics are not being done. So I don't think this is the players not trying and throwing a manager under a bus. I think the players look confused. I think the players look helpless. I think the players don't understand what their instructions are. And this is where I think United fans have got to become a little bit more open-minded and mature. Yes, some of these players have got to be improved upon, but that would be the case even if we were playing well, because it isn't good enough to win the Premier League. I think two things can be right at the same time. Some of these players still need to go, but this manager simply isn't good enough, and we are never going to become consistent enough with him. I don't still understand why our fans are warring over this when there's multiple issues that need to be addressed. But we knew we were never going to have a complete squad year one into the Ineos rebuild. That's almost, for me, a secondary matter. We are being outplayed, outstructured, and the basics are better in teams that are in relegation battles, sometimes in lower leagues, and definitely in inferior leagues compared to the Premier League in a European level. There's no defending this manager now, in my opinion, and it certainly needs to stop.